I'm pretty sure that my digital marketing instructor bailed on our class this morning. They're always kind of talking about how they don't want to be up in the mornings and how they'd rather be doing other things, and we have class on Saturdays. So, it's like, maybe they just decided that they didn't really feel like it. Yeah, so I mean, I don't really blame them for bailing if they did. I'm not saying they 100% did. And if they did, yeah, like I'm saying, whatever. It's not that big a deal. We all do it. But I don't know, it's annoying. I'm not a huge school person. I never have been. And I'm back in it now because, well, I'm interested in digital marketing for sure. I always have been. But I also just think it's important to get some sort of degree. I actually dropped out of school a few years ago. Yeah, so now I'm back, at least for a certificate program, which is just like 4 months, and then I'll get a certificate from the university that I'm doing it at, which is cool. And, it's all online as well, so it kind of fits with my learning style a little bit better, but I do wish that my instructor had a little bit more enthusiasm, because if I'm being honest about it, they are super boring. Like really, really boring. So yeah, it would be great to have just like a little bit more energy, a little more enthusiasm. That's really it. It's like, it makes me feel like they didn't really enjoy what they do, and it makes me question why they're teaching. I mean, because I've had instructors before and other things where, like, I was in music school before, audio engineering, and I had an instructor who he was working on his master's degree, so that's why he was teaching. But I've had other instructors who they are not teaching because they're pursuing something bigger, or because they really care about teaching young minds or any of that idealistic stuff. It's just kind of because they have to. So that's, I don't want to like make any assumptions or anything, but they definitely are not very motivating this go around for me, which is unfortunate. But I am it's kind of part of why I'm doing YouTube videos, is because it's part of the whole thing, and I just enjoy doing them as well. I like making them, but you have to find your own motivation in those kinds of situations, and that's a really hard thing to do in a lot of times in life. So you're like, that's what I'm working on right now, is trying to really find that motivation to be like, oh no, digital marketing is something that you really enjoy. This is me talking to me. Digital marketing is something that I really enjoy, but I'm being faced with kind of a dull situation, which I need to figure out how to keep myself on the right path moving forward and motivated to do something bigger with it. Whatever that means. Digital marketing is a really interesting thing, because it's really all about all of the data and the analytics and all the stuff that has kind of been controversial in recent years. I'm sure everybody around the world knows what I'm talking about, more or less, but if you are from America, you really know what I'm talking about. So it's just like really interesting seeing how things have developed, because I remember being a kid. I remember before MySpace was a thing. Like, I don't know if you're even watching this video, like, you might, if you know what MySpace is, then I'm kind of shocked, like, unless you're a little bit older. But yeah, like back in the day, social media was a whole other thing. It really evolved into some crazy stuff, and I'm here for it, to a certain degree, like I think it's actually a good thing. It has just a lot of opportunity, but also you have to be careful, and there's definitely ethics involved in it all. So that's something that, you know, I just find it super interesting, trying to balance all of those different aspects to the industry and the topic as in general. I was just watching a couple of different documentaries just now. I was watching one about Julian Assange. They're both on Netflix. Like, you're probably getting the same stuff that I am. But it's about Julian Assange, and then the other one was about Cambridge Analytica. And they both kind of covered the topics of like internet privacy and freedom of information and all of these kinds of things. And it's just wild to think about. It's just really wild to think about, because like there's so many different nuances to it all. Like, genuinely, I don't care about being tracked for like some general cookies of like, oh yeah, you know that I in general like to make music, I like to play video games, like I cook a little bit, like, you know, there's some basic stuff. I like, they're gonna be able to give me some decent ads that I might even buy some products here and there. I'm not personally somebody who does that a lot, but like, if it's the right thing, it's the right thing. But it's crazy altogether, and I think there's definitely a line to be had. Like, I don't want them looking in to be like, oh, I know when your your relatives died, or like, I know that like your family's sick, like private information, or like medical information and things like that. Like, if there's, you know, if I wanted to talk to somebody in private context about just, you know, something private, something medical, something whatever, then like, I don't want a social media site that I happen to decide to platform that message on to, you know, be able to use that information to market things to me. I don't necessarily care like if they have access to it, but like there's some information that I don't feel like should be actionable. Like, and I don't know, like I'm just kind of thinking off the top, like there's a lot of different thought processes. Like, one of the most common suggestions is really, what is it? Making personal data inherently the property of the person that data is derived from. So if, you know, if a website has a bunch of information on me, then before they can do anything with that information, they need my permission to do so. Which, honestly, like, for them to get around that, they just need to throw that into the terms and conditions. It's actually legally probably super simple for them to do that, and likely already what they do, at least to some degree. But it's, at some point, I believe at some point it isn't necessarily inherently the company's responsibility to, like, it's the consumer's responsibility to read the damn contract. Like, you need to read the contract at a certain point. And I don't read terms and conditions myself unless it's like something important, like something financial or something like that. But the terms and conditions are important, and if you really are that upset about your data being sold and used, you should probably pay a little bit closer attention to those terms and conditions. Now maybe that goes into a conversation about like how clear those terms and conditions are, because they're, you know, tiny, small print, 20-page long things. Like, who's gonna read that legalese nonsense? You could easily summarize all of those things probably into plain English or whatever language you're reading it into, and have it make sense to like a common person. Maybe that's something that we could take a look at further too. Like, how do we make those terms and conditions legible? You know, how can somebody, an average person, just read that and understand like what they're looking at? Because I've definitely looked at terms and conditions before, but man, like, there's no way that you're actually gonna go read through all of that. It just doesn't make sense. Like, it just actually doesn't make sense. I'll end up reading it 5 times over just because. Well, I mean, I won't read it 5 times over. I'll read it like 1 time over, but like, that didn't make sense, and get on with my life. But something that's written in that kind of language, it's gonna take me a few times to read it to really understand what's being said. I don't know. I think that could be an interesting, idea. It's definitely like the data should probably inherently be the property of whoever it's about, but it should also be that person's responsibility to be a good curator of that data. Like, you need to be a proper custodian of that data and make sure that you are not letting companies take advantage of it if you really don't want them to. And, if you don't care, like, it's no big deal. It's really not a big deal for some advertisements, but there's probably a discussion to be said about where that really becomes something that goes a little bit too far. I haven't really thought too much about it, but like, there's definitely a certain level of social conditioning and political ethics that go into what you're doing with the information that you have on people. And that makes it sound like it's like nefarious information. No, and it's just like little bits of information like, oh, you like kiwi fruit. Yeah, totally. But, and you have 5,000 points on somebody that's, you like kiwi fruit, you have a pretty decent perspective on who that person is. And you could probably, at that point, influence that person pretty heavily, depending on the person by person, but